very briefly again, American lens makers were good. C.C. Harrison was probably the best. But if there's any flaw attached to C.C. Harrison was his inconsistency. And you can get C.C. Harrison lenses that I've known a guy that's guy wouldn't sell it. He was offered $3,000 for a lens just like this. Guy wouldn't sell it because it was a beautifully made lens. But I have C.C. Harrisons that I wouldn't give you plug nickel for. James or John Dallmeyer, spelled D-A-L-L-M-E-Y-E-R. Dallmeyers were considered the best. And the one thing about a Dallmeyer is when you buy them, unfortunately a lot of the people now know this, whereas they didn't 10 years ago. Every lens is a good lens. If it's a 10-inch lens, generally you for sure can get an 8x10 on it, 10 back focus. So if he says the back focus is 4 inches, you've got a half-plate lens at best, which is small. So you want to try to find out, if he doesn't know the lens size, you can end up buying a lens and you have an 8x10 camera, and all you're going to get is a round circle on your 8x10 plate. So just like modern lenses, you have to match lens design, lens make, and lens size. Not size by dimension because older lenses tend to be bigger and shoot smaller. Newer lenses tend to be smaller, shoot bigger as the optic designs change. So just by looking at a lens, you can be really fooled. I have been, and foolishly haven't asked some of the key questions and end up with a couple lenses that are useless to me because I forgot to ask for or didn't assumed that the back focus would be sufficient because the lens was 6 inches tall and 3 inches in diameter, and come to find out it hardly fills a 5.7 plate. So the way you find out from the buyer, from the seller, is you ask for the back focus. And that's a simple thing. Just tell them, if they don't know what it is, just say, put it underneath the incandescent lamp. Just like Ted did, take a piece of white paper and focus it up to the incandescent lamp, focus it down until that light bulb right there is in focus. You can't see it, but it's right there in focus. Now the distance here to here will tell you what size of plate this lens will shoot. The only reason I know this is an f8 because Dallmeyer says it's an f8. And this is called a group/portrait lens, and it's an f8. This lens is the same series, it's a 3 series, and this is called a portrait lens. They don't call it a group lens. And yet this lens has the same exact back focus. They'll shoot a full-size male on a cabinet card at 16 feet. Now you'd think they would be different, right? They're not. They shoot the same exact field of view. The only difference is this is 5.6. Look how much more glass. This is 8. That much more glass just to get a faster lens. They both are designed after the Petzval design, which we talked about from the 1840 Joseph Petzval design. Now, the other Dallmeyer we have, which you may want to use, these are really sweet lenses. And they're more available than the Petzvals. And they were used by about 70% of the photographers in the world. Matter of fact, EA even advertises their own palladioscope as a cheap replacement for they even advertise that, for the much better Dallmeyer. And these lenses are what we would be equivalent to like a 15 millimeter 1.4 lens. It's a common everyday lens for if a guy could not afford the $85 American 1881 price, and for this $65 American, then he could buy one of these for $20 American. And he could afford it, and he could do both portraits and landscapes with this. Now the way they would get around these lenses, this one's an actual whole plate lens and has a full set of stops here, which are the Waterhouse stops, which I'm sure are familiar with. If you saw my Crater Lake shot in my book, this is the lens I shot Crater Lake with on a whole plate negative. And it has a fairly wide angle view, but because I'm using the lens to match the plate. Now I have 3 other of these. I have a 12-10, a 10-8, and I guess, and then this would be the third one, the 6.5, 8.5. So if I wanted to do a portrait and I didn't have these, I would put a 12-10 on this. So I have a longer focal length, and it would make a great portrait lens. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the Petzval swirls, and it tends to be real flat. So, but it does incredibly beautiful portraits. So what they would say is you use a larger lens on a smaller plate, thus the sweet spot is bigger, and thus the sharpness is more intense. And of course, then you stop it down, and it gets even sharper. So if you want a little more of a portrait fall off, you shoot it wide open. Same as modern photography. I recommend any of you who can find a Dallmeyer nicknamed RR, you'll never regret buying this lens. It's the lens that does everything, but it doesn't have the what I call sub-characteristics of a Petzval. There's other lenses called, in the Civil War, you see all the battlefield burial scenes where nothing's moving, or a landscape. They would use, which I did not bring, but it's, I believe, on the cover. The lens here on the cover is called a pillbox. It's a Darlot, and there's only one set of optics glued together in the rear. The front is, all this is a brass cap with a metal washer in the front. And you were talking about taking, I believe, the front optics out of a lens. Well, you're making a single achromatic lens, which is great in that it'll as a landscape lens, it'll photograph from the front of the camera to infinity. And nothing, but they're slow as molasses in the wintertime. But when you're shooting dead bodies, it doesn't matter. But what they liked about them is there was no distortion like a wide angle would give them. It's flat. And so they could go like a 2-minute exposure and not worry about it.